Hey everyone, today I'll be talking about the Tomoe River Paper. This is a fan favorite amongst fountain pen users, artists, and those who just love high quality, thin paper. And one of the most popular planners, Hobonichi, has been using this paper for 20 years. However, last year, in 2021, it says here, production and sale of the Tomoe River Paper by Tomoegawa ended and was transferred to a new company called Sanzen Paper Manufacturing. So everyone was freaking out because Hobonichi sells over 700,000 planners every year, and if the paper changes, that's a lot of change for a lot of people. And we've been hearing that Sanzen has tweaked the formula a bit to make it a bit more friction pen friendly. That's the erasable pen that uses friction and heat. So they did change the paper, and that's why they included a little sample to kind of comfort us to make sure we like the paper in preparation for next year. It's cute that they also included a little monthly calendar. It's like smaller than my hand, so that's just giving you an idea of just how tiny it is. It's so tiny. Yeah, it's about 12 cms, and then maybe 17, almost 17 cms wide. So it's just so cute how tiny it is. Well, let's do a fountain pen test. Let's see what it looks like. I'll also do a gel pen test and see how it feels. This has been a big deal in the paper community. Paper is a huge deal in the stationery world. I think also in Japan, because they have been able to make such a high quality paper feels so thin, and it doesn't have bleed through, which is just amazing. All right, I'll be using the Sailor Shikiori Tokiwa Matsu. The Shikiori line is really cool. They have a lot of nature inspired colors, and this is it's green. It's a dark green. And I got this sample from Yoseka Stationery, which is a fountain pen stationery specialty shop out in Brooklyn, but they have amazing online orders, and they've grown so much since the pandemic, and a lot of people have fallen in love with fountain pens over that time frame. So I think it's really cool that they also offer samples, so you don't have to buy the full bottle. It takes me too long to go through a full bottle, so they sell them in 3 mLs as well as 4 mLs, and if you do 10 bottles of inks, your 11th bottle is free after you recycle all of them. So they give you a prepaid label, which is just so cool, that idea that they send out glass bottles. Really, keeps the more eco-conscious part of fountain pens. Let's do a quick pen test. Okay, I do think it feels smoother than the original, the one by Tomoegawa. So what people like about the Tomoe River paper is how the fountain pen inks, how your markers, how your watercolor pools on top of the paper, forcing it to dry on top. And in that way, you can see so much of the shading, the sheening. So this is a really dark green. I'm not even sure if it's coming out as green on here. I didn't expect it to look so green. Usually it doesn't look this green. I mean, this dark. Here, I think some of the green is more picking up a bit when I do it more horizontally. That was perhaps too much ink. So that's kind of nice. You can see the sheening start to come up. And then on the back side, no bleed through. Looks good. Let's try that on the original Tomoe River paper. Oh, I've actually already have one here. I've done it on this one. So I also use the same glass pen. This is a J. Herbin glass pen. And I think I'm maybe I used too much force on the green is not quite popping out. Maybe it is the paper. So it's picking up some different sheens. It almost looks a bit brown on the new paper versus more of a green on this paper. I'm very surprised that it's coming up like that. This is the original. And I do think the colors look different. This reminds me more of a forest green, and this is picking up or sheening some kind of brown hues. I mean, how fascinating is that? Paper is just such a huge differentiating factor on how your inks are going to behave, how they look, what color is going to be brought out. Really interesting. I'm trying to see if I can write more on a slant. I'll just call this Sanzen Paper, which is the new company that purchased it. Okay. Yeah, it's very fascinating how the ink is sheening different. This is just way more forest. I'll give it some time to dry, so the ink does have to pool on top to dry, which is one of the, I guess, cons of the Tomoe River paper, because it takes longer for it to dry, so you need some blotting paper. It just requires a little bit more patience, but if you get used to it, you are rewarded with such beautiful ink characteristics. So let me dip my pen in water to clean it off, and I'll try this one, the Kayoku, which is a fabulous like purple blue color. And you can tell all the different elements in that, and I would just love to see what it would look like in terms of chromatography. I also purchased that in a 3 ml sample. It's a really cool color, and this series, the Sailor Yuzameku, it looks so different depending on what paper you use. Just really cool to see like the unique combinations of paper, pen, inks. Let me get a little bit more. Okay. So when you first write with it, you think it is actually a gray ink. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know why it looked like that. But then it dries on the Tomoe River paper, and all you see is this fabulous, divine purple blue color, which blew my mind away. So right now it's looking a little bit more purple already as we speak. I sometimes don't really do that many blotches because that's not how most people write, but if you're an artist, you can definitely do, you know, some kind of drawings with these, which would be cool. This one I would definitely recommend a broad nib for, because I feel like it would just be too light. You can't even see anything if it's a fine nib. Oh wow, I think it's actually very similar. I would say this paper, the ink on this paper looks very similar to the original Tomoe River paper, which is really cool. All right, I think I can live with that. It's not exactly the same, and the texture of the paper is not exactly the same. The writing experience wise, it feels, people say it has more tooth. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know. I can't quite tell whether it has a little bit more tooth to it. Maybe I have to use an actual fountain pen. Let me do that to determine. This one I have, this is my personal custom 823. Okay, I can tell. Yeah. So I couldn't tell with the glass pen, but I can definitely tell with my custom 823 and fine nib. This is Takesume. Takesume ink. And it has a little bit more tooth. You feel like you're writing. And I actually like that because one of my favorite things about the Midori paper is like you feel like you're writing. You're not just gliding through like on ice or glass. And here. Yeah, this one is smoother, but it's so slight, I'm not sure I would even be able to pick it up if I wasn't tuned into that. Maybe I don't know papers like super well as others, so if you told me, now I can kind of see it, but originally I don't think I can see it too much. The paper itself is still really good. Maybe they tweaked it a bit since the reviews first came out for the Sanzen paper, because the whole planner world was up in a storm about that. And then let's try gel pen. I would say the Muji gel feels similar. Nothing too crazy there. Let's do a swatch of Tombow. Okay, I think I can tell now because this one just looks a little bit more light, more watercolory than the Sanzen paper. You can try a mild liner too. It's a mild liner brush pen. That's not bad. Okay. The difference is I think for the markers, you can feel a little bit more of the feedback. This one, it looks like it's just pooling on top. I feel like this one is more similar to the experience of using like non-coated paper almost, which is strange because I think it is still coated. All right. So I waited a bit. That's not too long of a wait. Okay. And I will try Tombow Fuden Suke pen brush. Okay, that's not too bad. All right, I will spare you having to watch me do this the full word. I'll just write Fude. Okay, I think this is just a little different. The writing experience is different. This seems a little bit more coated, a little smoother. This one does seem rougher, especially when I did the tombows. You can tell when I layered this tombow marker on it, it's completely fine. It almost looks blended. This one looks a little less blended. And then over here, let's flip out to the back and see what we have. Not bad. No bleed through, typical ghosting. Yeah, not too bad. I would say it's about fairly similar. Overall, I don't think we need to be too concerned for 2024. I think if we use this for a while, we'll just be used to it. People were, discussing like it's going to be the deal breaker for Hobonichi in future months or future years, but I don't think so. The sheen, it does sheen differently. at least for this one. And even this one is pulling out a lot more of the pink. This one I would say is a little bit more purple, at least in daylight here. If you're using a typical black pen, black ink, I couldn't really tell the difference in terms of sheening for those, but you can obviously tell some of the difference in terms of how it feels. So the writing experience is a little different. It's not better or worse. I do think the marker experience is better. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Overall, I'm really happy Hobonichi included this because I wouldn't have, purchased this separately in terms of just buying like a notebook of Sanzen paper. Let me just use a ballpoint. This is one of my favorite ballpoints. If you don't know, definitely recommend the blend pen. It's from, has a very satisfying click. Anyways, all right. I would say the ballpoint feels the same. I've used ballpoint Hobonichi for my current year, and it feels about the same. Ballpoint's one of the ones that, you don't need to wait for it to dry before using. And then, oops, sorry about that. I do want to test it out with my Decimo because I love using my vanishing point in Hobonichi paper because of how small the nib is. This is an extra fine. And I actually inked it with Kobe purple gray, though you can't see the purple because, yeah, unfortunately you can't really see the purple because it's in an extra fine, so I would definitely have to get a broader nib or just use a different kind of pen for that. This is in Kobe ink, which is one of the more lubricated inks. Sailor inks I find are more dry, and it would make my extra fine look much thinner than the fine. But with a Kobe ink, it almost looks like a fine, so that's very fascinating. Okay, I definitely recommend vanishing point for the new paper as well. That was one of the things I was a little bit worried about when they told me the paper had a little bit more tooth than the original Tomoe River, but it feels great. It's still super smooth. Overall, I'm very happy with it. And I love this little tiny sample sheet that they gave. We'll see what 2024 looks like. And if you use the Hobonichi weeks, that actually goes up until 2025 with the original paper. So you can only imagine how much of a stockpile the Hobonichi company has. It's just so incredible. All right, they say here one change is improved resistance to ink bleeding or show through on the other side. I do think that is true. It seems like there is less ghosting. That might be well, even here, it's white part. There is less ghosting. And it still shows, look at how fabulous and beautiful this one looks. I think only Tomoe River Paper can pull out all the colorways of a complex ink. So, looks very dreamy here. I am fascinated how this green is sheening more brown than more of a forest green than the original. Just such a magical combination. You feel like a scientist finding different elements. Well, all right. So let me know if this was helpful, if you've tried it, if you've gotten your Hobonichi and you want to see what the paper feels like. Yeah, let me know if this is helpful. The sound itself is a little different. It still has the crispest sound, but I think I would have to get the full book in order to see the full sound. So Hobonichi paper is just the whole experience where it's the inks, it's the sound, it's the feel. Yeah, so thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you all next time.